Okay, guys, can you hear me? I can still hear you, so if you can just confirm that you're getting this and you're seeing it on Twitch.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. All right, so this is going to be a really quick demo because, of course, we spent too much time today critiquing. Seems to be a trend, so we're going to try to get a handle on that. Anyway, so organic modeling. First of all, before we had sculpting, we had something that you guys are already familiar with. It's called soft select. So when you select a vertice or any component, you hit B, you turn on soft select, you hold down B and drag. This controls your fall off. And then this is what we had long before we had any organic modeling tools. So this is the way that we'd model in 3D. Why are you not letting me drag? It's like my control button's stuck or something. No? Stop. Got a stuck key is what's going on here. It's just always annoying. Something. There we go. So there, now it's working. So obviously this is your old school organic modeling of choice. It still works very, very well. And I want to say that you can control the fall off obviously by holding down B and dragging, or if you double click any of these tools, it doesn't even matter, even the select tool, you're going to see that you have soft select in the tool. And these are your soft select options. So this is another way that you can control your fall off, is with this slider. So the B button is basically controlling the slider. As I hold down B and drag, then you can see that the slider actually will change. Right? So either use your slider or drag the B button, totally your call, whichever. Another thing is when you're pulling out this, you can really see that you get a particular profile, this soft pull that I have going on here. Watch. If you want to change that, that's the fall off curve here. So watch if I change this to be a sharp angle like this. This is a pretty extreme angle. Now when I pull it out, you can actually see that is mimicked here. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. So if you change your profile under curve presets, then that's going to be how the soft select works. And the default is a very soft fall off. So when I pull it out, I get a soft curve like that. Versus this linear, again, you get something much sharper. All right, hopefully that makes sense. You can even turn on a different color ramp if that floats your boat. So that's the old way of doing organic modeling. Now we're in 2020 and we have so many different organic modeling tools. I already mentioned ZBrush and Mudbox. So they were thinking about integrating for a minute there, for a hot second. They were talking about possibly integrating Mudbox into Maya. I personally wish they had just did it. I feel like that would have been a great move on their part, but they felt like it maybe made them more money, possibly, to keep Mudbox as a separate software package or just as a ZBrush killer. I don't know. So what we got stuck with was a sculpting shelf. So this is how you would sculpt in ZBrush. So if you hover over these, then you're going to kind of get your options. Like lift, the first one is lift a surface. Sorry, I can talk, I swear. So B again is your brush size. If you hold down the B button, that's going to change your brush size. And you might note that you have a large line going straight up. And now when I do this, I'm sculpting, just like I would in Mudbox or ZBrush, which is pretty cool. I didn't mean to delete that. Meant to undo. Undo. Okay. So another thing, when you hold down B, you're going to see that's brush size, obviously. But we also have a line that's going straight up. That's going to be your brush magnitude. And if you hold down the M button, I believe, yep, see, M, that brings the line down. And the M button is going to be your magnitude or strength. And that way when I sculpt, I'm not sculpting with as much strength. It's your brush strength or brush magnitude. M for brush magnitude, B for brush size. And so in this way we can sculpt just like we would in Mudbox or ZBrush. But here's the thing, you can see already it's looking very like low poly because it is low poly. So typically when we sculpt, we want to have something that has medium or high poly because this might be just a little too chunky for what we want. If we hold down the shift button, by the way, shift is going to be our smooth or relax, and that's going to be the way that we could kind of erase this or smooth it back out. Of course, you always have your undo button. You can always use undo, but I'm just holding down shift, and shift is going to allow me to relax out my mesh, relax or smooth, just by holding down the shift button. By the way, this works the same in ZBrush as it does in Maya, as it does in Mudbox, to my knowledge. They all work the same way. If you hold down the shift button, then you're going to get this relax or smoothing, like so. That's not the same exactly as erasing, but that's about as close as you're going to get to erasing. Now, again, when you're sculpting, you would prefer to sculpt at a higher polygon level, so we can select the sphere, we can go over to Polymodeling Shelf, and we can smooth the sphere out. Click on the Polysmooth button. And we can even give it multiple level of divisions. So now I have a lot of polygons, a lot of quads here. So then with all these quads, right, I can go back to my sculpting shelf and I can continue sculpting. But with now, when I sculpt, you're going to see that my edges are more defined, my sculpting is more defined, and generally I get more work done because I have more polygons. So again, B to adjust your brush size, and B to adjust your brush size, and M to adjust your magnitude or brush strength. And of course, Shift to relax or smooth, as I just said. Now, in ZBrush, we have the option of holding down the Alt button, and that will push versus pull. Unfortunately, in Maya, Alt does what? It orbits. So that gets a little confusing. So it's like, what? I don't want to pull the mesh out or smooth the mesh. I don't want to do either thing, but I actually want to push in. And in Maya, that's the Control button. So if you hold down the Control button, you're going to push versus pull. Or if you want to think of it as a giant clay ball, then when you hold down the Control button, and again, that's Alt in ZBrush, but Control in Maya, that's kind of removing volume. So for those of you guys that have stuffed animals, and you want to model a stuffed animal, this is a good way to do it. So let's say I start with another sphere, and I've got such little time to do this. But like say I start with another sphere really quick, and boy, I don't have too much time, pretty much out of time. But I start with another sphere, I polysmooth it, maybe twice. So I have some geometry. I'll bet you guys didn't know that you had a symmetry function. You probably didn't know that, but there is a symmetry function in Maya. So if I were to select a particular vertex, then I can select the symmetrical opposite of that. And the way that I can do that is by, again, going into my tool settings where we have soft select. I just went over this, and we're not using soft select now. We're jumping to 2020, we're using sculpting tools. But look at this, we've got symmetry, and we can turn symmetry on, Object X. And now I have, what's that? I have 2 dots. And so obviously anything I do to one dot will happen to the other. So if I turn on soft select now, then I have 2 eye sockets. Yes, an eye socket. And a nose, maybe. Or something like that, right? But this is, again, using soft select. So we want to jump to using sculpting tools, but soft select is always there. Soft select is always your kind of fallback. It's an old tool, but it is foolproof. It is rock solid. And before we had sculpting, soft select, that was our organic modeling tool of choice. But now, make sure the object is selected. Go back to your sculpting shelf. This is, by the way, the second brush is your smooth again or relax. Let's try with pull. We're going to go pull now. So with pull, then obviously we can pull out something like that. So now we're just like pulling out the geometry. Or again, we just talked about control. So if we hold down control, then we're pushing in. And so then we can create our eye sockets that way. And because we're on the move brush, we could even like change the brows. And now I'm making a jack-o'-lantern or something, right? Who's got questions? Because I'm almost out of time. Nobody? Okay, so pull out a nose. Okay, I really want to sort of go over some organic sculpting in ZBrush, for example, versus just Maya, but this should get you at least started. a little bit. So if you want to play with this as something, for those of you guys that have stuffed animals, or you just want to play with some organic modeling, you want to dip your feet in the water. Of course, I would always suggest using ZBrush Mini Core or ZBrush, like always, always, always. But we do have these options. Softly lift a surface, right? So there's my softly lift a surface brush. I still have my symmetry on, and now I can use this, right? Hold down M to lower your magnitude. Maybe lift out some cheekbones by making a large brush. B, hold down brush, B for brush, and then lift out some cheeks. Hold down Control to hollow in, and now I'm making kind of this. Let's lift out a chin, maybe a jawline. And this is not a very good demo because, again, I waited a little too long to do this. But you can at least see how the sculpting tools, although not as advanced as ZBrush or Mudbox, you can at least dip your toes in the water and begin maybe doing a little bit of organic modeling. In order for organic modeling to really work, you've got to have a certain amount of density. And so you can't really model that well with a low density object. Doesn't really work that well. But you can certainly play with these brushes. Like there's a cut stroke. This is almost like the damn standard brush that we would have in ZBrush. And this is something if I wanted to make a line. So if I wanted to make a mouth, this should allow me to make a mouth. If I make a small brush, hopefully this digs in. Yeah. But see, now we're back to the same problem of having something that's very low poly. So if we're trying to dig in a mouth, which is doable, but it doesn't look that good, right, at this very low polygon sphere. So whenever we're sculpting anything with organic modeling, and again, sorry, it's only like a 15-minute demo and it's really, really short, but it's just an introduction to the sculpting shelf. And I'd love for you guys to play around with these brushes. If you're making a stuffed animal, which I'm tempted to ask you to do for homework, but how about this? We'll just say that the people if you have stuffed animal in your scene, try to put something on your blog that shows me that you're trying to model your stuffed animal using the sculpting shelf. Or if you want to be like a cool kid, then download ZBrush Mini Core and try using that, because I think you're going to find that ZBrush Mini Core is just going to be a lot more fun than doing it here in Maya. Because remember that Maya's sculpting shelf is just basically their attempt at adding sculpting tools in Maya when we already have some really great sculpting tools available to us via Mudbox and via ZBrush. So I want to keep going with this, like I add more density, right? So that when I add more density, I can then sculpt better. More polygons means that I'll be able to like make a line with the sculpting brush, and that line will be more defined because I'll have more polygons. But this all feels like kid stuff to me, because once you've started using ZBrush and once you've started using Mudbox, this is going to feel very, very clunky by comparison. If you're just like, I cannot learn another software package, I don't have time for it, then I have to just give you my best advice that I repeat again. There are sculpting tools in Maya. You can use them, you can play with them, you can have fun with them, but ultimately they're like kids' tools when you compare them to the tools in ZBrush or Mudbox. So I don't have too much else to say on that count other than have some fun doing some organic modeling, and don't feel like you have to, because if you don't have an organic thing in your scene, then it really doesn't matter. So if you don't have some kind of character in your scene, and really this assignment you should not, but if you have a stuffed animal, then maybe you want to model that stuffed animal and maybe you want to play with Mudbox or ZBrush. Or if you want to torture yourself, I know I'm expressing my strong opinion here, but yes, you can totally use the sculpting shelf as long as you have a high enough polygon mesh. Then yes, you can totally do it here in Maya. It's just going to feel ultimately very clunky compared to doing it in ZBrush or Mudbox. So go download ZBrush Mini Core, go use your tablet, go have some fun with ZBrush Mini Core, and learn like organic sculpting that way. And I'm sorry if I'm bashing Maya here, but this sculpting shelf was added recently, relatively recently, because they wanted to give Maya users an alternative to ZBrush, an alternative to Mudbox if you couldn't afford either one. Well, now we have a free version of ZBrush, so there's no excuse there. And as students, you guys get Mudbox for free, so there's no excuse there. So I don't really care if you use Maya's sculpting shelf or Mudbox or ZBrush. Just do it, like Nike. Okay? And I guess that's the end of my my short demo. I don't mean to bash the sculpting shelf. I'm sure you can get good results out of this. But again, it's a lot more clunky than either ZBrush or Mudbox. And now we have free ZBrush Mini Core, so use it. I'm going to stop now. Bye.